Hello and welcome to Teaching Python. This is episode 132. My name's Sean Tiber. I'm a coder who teaches.
And
And
my
to
name.
oh, go ahead, Kelly.
Oh,
Sorry.
you're
We've
messing
already
us up.
screwed it up.
You're messing us up. My name's Kelly Schuster Paredes, and I'm a teacher who codes. And I'm not alone this time. I'm with other teachers, so I'm excited. Now do your spiel.
I'm very excited about this. Today, we're joined by Dora Palfy and Chelsea Clagg to talk with us about getting more non-coding teachers into teaching. So this is an exciting conversation. Welcome to both of you. We're excited to have you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. We're excited to be here.
Very good. Well, let's start where we always do with the wins of the week. And Dora, I'm going to choose you to go first. So something good that's happened inside or outside of the classroom this week.
Right. Yeah. So I'm technically not really inside the classroom except when I visit schools, but I was in New Mexico for their digital learning conference this past weekend. And I actually got to do a session on empowering teachers who are not coders to code. And we just had a great session. Having people code in Python for the first time and being really excited about it and spending their Saturday doing so was just a great experience for me.
I'm a little envious. I remember the time of first learning to code, and I was like, wow, this is cool.
I love it. And Chelsea, over to you.
So we just started state testing this week. So is it okay if my win of the week is from last week?
Sure.
So last week we had been doing some SOL review, and I'd been coaching a first-year teacher, and we decided that for one of our SOL reviews, our students would analyze children books, and then our middle school students would read to elementary kids via live stream. So we did that, and it was really cool, and all of the elementary teachers want to make the older students in our county reading to the younger ones a more common thing. So it was just really cool to see the young kids so excited and bonding with the older kids, and the older kids actually like being appropriate, good role models. So
that's like a double win, that they were good role models and everyone had fun. I love that.
I always found that funny when they were up there reading or speaking, and you're used to them with one version of themselves in the classroom where they're maybe goofy or inappropriate or whatever, and you're always corralling them, and then they get in front of the younger children, and suddenly like this polish comes over there and they're just ready to speak, and they do so well, and they're so kind and so generous, and you're like, where did you come from? Like, can you do that in my classroom? Like, that would be amazing, right? But like, they take it so seriously, and I love seeing that with those students.
100%.
Well, I guess elementary school students are a more authentic audience than trying to maybe impress their teacher. I don't know.
100%. Sean, are you going or am I going?
Why don't you go next, Kelly?
Okay, well, mine's not really about my classroom, but you know how I'm addicted to AI and trying to help promote AI for educators, especially when it comes to integrating AI and Python. And I found two good resources that one was Grow with Google. It's generative AI for educators. It's a 2-hour course, and I took it yesterday, all excited. I have to tell you the truth, though. I didn't get 100% on the quiz, but I just kind of ran through it. Really cool. I'm excited about that. And then I found another one yesterday called Day of AI. And apparently there's the Day of AI on May, I think like 13th or something. And they have a data science programming course with Python that's really cool. And it has all the slideshow. And I thought, what a great, how convenient. Like, we have this talk today. So all the non-coding teachers out there who want to get into AI, they can do it in block coding. They can do it in Python. They do things about making sense of our surroundings, how AI and human rights are in. Such a great two resources, and I have been just delving into them. Sorry, that's a little joke from us because delve is like the word of the past 2 years. So delving into it and enjoying it. And I put the links in the show notes for us.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Well, my win is actually getting out of work for a change. So this is kind of exciting. For the last 2 years, we've had summer interns on our team, and this is an area where I've really spent a lot of time and energy. after I left full-time teaching to really keep scratching that itch of wanting to help other people learn and discover things about themselves. And so I became heavily involved in our college intern program at my company. And I'm now one of the program leads for the United States. We have 20 new interns coming in. And for the first time since I started, I'm not the one developing the curriculum for onboarding them. We actually have our learning and development team that's generated a whole new curriculum for both interns and new hires in our area to be able to help onboard them. So I am just thrilled that they took some of the things that I had developed, as well as a lot of information from across the company and across our IT function, and turned that into an actual curriculum that's pretty decent. So I'm excited to support them in that effort and help supplement that curricula rather than having to create it all myself and teach it all myself. So this is a very big win, and I'm very excited about it.
It's nice having a written curriculum, no?
I mean, other than making it up as I go along, yeah, it's way better.
That's funny. Cool.
All right, well, why don't we jump right in? Let's start with introductions. And Dora, you brought Chelsea with you to this, right? Like, we had been talking for a few months now about getting you on the show, and you said, I have to bring Chelsea along. She's a great a great example of all that you're trying to do at Imagi. Why don't we start first? Would you introduce yourself? The company that you founded, as well as a brief overview of some of the products that you do, and then also, weave Chelsea into that as best you can in terms of the role that she's played with curriculum and teaching and using the products that you have.
Of course, yeah. So thank you so much for the opportunity to be here. And well, if we backtrack, like original story, I come more from the kind of coding side, like you. I worked as a software engineer and experienced a lack of diversity in the industry. And my kind of teaching experience was just volunteering a lot to teach kids and teach girls coding. I do come a family of teachers, but never officially entered the classroom. And essentially, like, my big question was, how could we ensure that like the future tech employees and coders will be more diverse? And it was a similar experience for my co-founder. And there was a research project I did in my master's degree where we worked with girls and other underrepresented kids from lower socioeconomic backgrounds, and co-created essentially a product idea that would make it fun to learn coding. And so some of the things that we discovered were important is making the experience more creative and tangible. So, not just learning to code for the sake of learning to code, but actually linking it to something that's relevant to the student. And eventually what came up with is a way of learning Python through creating art and animations, and then also having a physical component, our Imagi Charms, which is almost like a Tamagotchi. This is the Imagi Charm box, and for anyone on the live stream. And then this little gadget that essentially like displays your art in the real world. And so we started Imagi on a more like consumer approach. We actually have an app that anyone can download. We've had around 300,000 kids like coding with that. But what we discovered and realized is that there were a couple educators who started using the tool. And then we kind of reflected on our initial mission of making it more inclusive and accessible to learn coding. And then realized that, okay, if we actually could provide a tool for schools and teachers, then we would really living up to that initial mission. And so sort of going into how Chelsea comes into the picture, we literally just, I think, launched our education version of our platform like in the fall of 2022. And I think it was not much later that Chelsea discovered, ordered our Imagi Charms first, and then she's been the champion in her district. So it was actually one of the first school districts we worked with in the US was Chelsea's district, Frederick County. We were originally from Sweden. That's where Imagi started. But kind of focus on the US school system because I did my undergrad in the US. And so yeah, Chelsea was one of the first educators who discovered and championed and has been really helpful and generous with feedback as well, just to make sure that we, develop the tool in a direction that makes sense for educators.
And Chelsea, tell us your side of how you got involved, what attracted you to this program? How did you get going with this?
Yeah, so I'm a instructional technology coach for Frederick County Public Schools. So there's kind of two components to my job. One component of my job is teaching teachers how to integrate technology into their classroom, and another part is then instructional coaching. So our county has had funds and grants, and they were looking for some tools to use to beef up their coding program. And the state of Virginia, we have computer solutions as a elective for all students. I don't know if all districts or all counties offer it, but it's a class offered in our state. And what we discovered is that with this national teacher shortage that we are having right now, is that most of our teachers in Frederick County, and not just in my county, across Virginia, and I imagine the United States, not all of our computer solutions teachers have a computer background at all, or coding background or anything like that. Many of them are career switchers that have came to our county from like a business side, maybe. So you have all these people who maybe came from business, or they're retired from a previous job, and they're just wanting to continue working in some way, or want to spread their knowledge to children, but they don't have a coding background at all. So how do you get all these teachers to know enough coding to teach middle school, elementary, even high school kids? So that's kind of how we found Imagi, and ended up starting out with just a pilot program of just a few of them, and now I think we have them at every middle school in our county. Um, and yeah, now we have all of our computer solutions teachers using them, and we have all of our kids coding in Python now across the county. So it's pretty cool.
Nice. And before you were an instructional technology coach, were you a coder? Did you have experience coding before you started this?
Absolutely not. I was an English teacher for 12 years before I became an instructional technology coach. So it was also Imagi was one of the ways to kind of teach myself some coding beyond just block-based coding.
Well, thank you both for coming on the show and talking to us about this. This is something that Kelly and I have talked about so many times before, about making coding accessible to more people, right? Like making it something that anyone can do. And personally, my 10-year-old daughter is watching the live stream right now from my son's lacrosse practice sidelines, right? And she loves robotics, she loves coding. Some of it's because it's things that she does with her dad, but some of it's just because she's really good at it. And the things that she's at that age where it's not a boys thing or a girls thing, it's just a thing that they all do. And the school that she's at does a really good job of making coding accessible and friendly to everyone, no matter where they're coming from. So thank you for keeping this going. Just personally, I want to say hi to my daughter. Thank you for watching the live stream, but also she's one of those kinds of kids that I think really benefits from this, right? That coding is more than learning it for coding's sake. It's something that is personally relevant to her. And I see it every day when she comes home and she's excited to tell me about something that she learned in computer science class.
Super cool. So I'm like, as you're talking, Chelsea, 7 years ago, when I was told I had to teach Python as a bio teacher, or as a bio, I'm an ed tech specialist as well. So everything we know your pain, Sean and I, you're like ed tech, computer science, do everything. Oh, learn some coding, help teachers get their computers turned on, logged into their LMS. Oh yeah. And then go in and push it and do some more classes to connect. So there's a lot going on, but then having to tackle and teach Python, just added a little bit of stress, I think, to the job. Back 7 years ago, I remember just trying to figure out what a variable was and how to teach it. So how can you sort of describe your scenario and maybe what the challenge is, anything you faced while learning Python? Or did you have any challenges, or just came naturally?
So I think most schools are familiar with block-based coding, and a lot of them use Scratch or CS First through Google. And what we discovered is that in the middle school, at least, there was this humongous jump from block-based coding to the actual coding in Python. And as soon as, they switched over to seeing that language, it just looked like a foreign language to kids. And it was very intimidating to them. And of course, the educators that were going to be teaching it to them as well. So one of the things that our county really liked about Imagi was that they had all of the lessons pre-made for the teachers in Google Slides, ready to go. It wasn't, just something that the teachers, okay, I have this tool, but how am I going to teach it to the kids? All the lessons were pre-made. The initial first lesson kind of introduces the matrix and the idea of turning on pixels, kind of like a chessboard. So I think even making that connection kind of starts making sense to the kids. And then I think at the middle school level, since they were already used to block-based coding and coding the games and stuff in Scratch, even though the Imagi charm is kind of simplistic, I think that at least at the middle school level, they liked having that tangible thing to code. And for them, sometimes we're always trying to go more new school and more AI and more digital and save the trees, and that's fantastic. But I think that elementary and middle school kids still like having that thing to go home and show their parents. So having the little Imagi charm that they could take home or that they could wear around the school and they could say, look, I made this, like, look, I coded this. I think giving them that little bit of ownership over the physical part, I think was also important to get kids to kind of buy into. We also had a huge issue with kids wanting to sign up for the classes at the high school level. We know that the future is technology, that's where the jobs are going to be, in the next years. We know that right now there's a shortage for people who have those skills. So, if we want our students to have those jobs, those good jobs, those high paying jobs in the future, and to be fulfilling that need, we have to start their interest younger. I mean, and that's a challenge too. How do we teach coding and get kids who are, in elementary and middle school level interested in something that is higher level like that? So I think Magi was just a really good outlet for our county and to kind of fit that gap that we needed.
So Dora, as you were developing Imagi and as you were founding it, was this always the kind of vision that you had? Was this kind of full comprehensive view of, curricula plus hardware plus skills and development, or was it something that evolved over time as you learned more about how people were using the product?
Yeah, so this was definitely not the plan. We had the idea for the tangible product from my research, and then I think like anyone who makes hardware kind of thinks, oh, Kickstarter. So like we had a Kickstarter campaign in the beginning, and it was very naturally like driving kind of parents towards the tool. And so our first software was our like mobile app. So there is like the Imagi app, which works on the phone or the iPad and has kind of like self-guided lessons. And that's completely free and have like, I think to date, like 300,000 kids who have tried it, right? But what we saw was that, well, that's kind of like, yeah, just like one way of doing things. But as we were developing those levels, we ourselves always wanted to test it. And so we were like, even when we just had the prototype, like we would be testing with kids first in a one-on-one setting, but then even earlier, like we would bring together a group of kids to kind of see how the tool works. And so in that process, I ended up developing slides for myself because I wanted to see like what concepts would like so I knew coding, right? I didn't know so much about like writing curriculum, but then I wanted to test like what concepts would like stick with the kids and really just started to develop these slides in detail for my own sake, for when I was like essentially teaching test sessions. And then some of those like turned into opportunities to partner with organizations like Black Girls Code in the beginning. And so as more and more of these opportunities popped up, we just developed more and more of these like slides. And so I think the reason why they are so detailed, like Chelsea mentioned, is because we ourselves like used it to teach. And especially my co-founder, I always have to give credit to her for being extremely detail oriented. I'm a bit more like you, coming up with the curriculum as I go, but then Beatrice, my co-founder, she makes sure that we have it ready before. And so so they were just kind of there because of this reason. And so as we launched this education solution, we were just putting it out there and seeing if this resonates with teachers. And it seems like having the slides and actually editable slides is like a really nice format for educators. But of course, right now we have more of the school focus. So now we are spending more time like developing in that direction. But initially that kind of just emerged as a side product, I would say. Yeah.
I find it really neat because I showed it to my Girls Who Code Club, and the first and I actually gave the I gave away my freebie. Sorry, Dora. I gave it to the leader of the Girls Who Code, and I said, I just want to, thank you, because she started this club. And the first thing she said, "Oh no, thanks a lot. Now my weekend's totally gone." And I was like, "What? I'm just gonna have to figure this out." So it's really cool that it does have a nice tendency to get the girls on board, because it's like, oh, can I hang this on my backpack? But I think what's really neat about it is the fact that you went in with that tangible idea, because that's always something that I have trouble with in the classroom. And BBC Microbit, give a shout out to them, because they brought out the tangible item, and it's nice. It's got the 25 LEDs. They don't change pretty colors, so that kind of defers a couple, because you can only do so much with the 5x5. But the idea that you can push further with functions and go into the animations is kind of neat. Have you seen, Chelsea, have you seen the kids go further past, just turning on the lights and really diving deep into Python concepts? Have you gotten that far into the pilot? And
yeah, we have some kids who have gotten really into it, and like we've had kids that have coded up to like 800 lines of code, which I think could be simplified if as they continued and stuff to advance their code, because that's a lot of code. But that just goes to show how passionate some of the kids are. The kids also seem to really enjoy some of the challenges that Imagi has put out as well. And while the challenges aren't always necessarily straight related to coding, like the more recent challenges related to entrepreneurship. So I think also just having, also like Dory said earlier about kind of tying it to the real world as well. It doesn't do any good to teach coding if you're not also teaching like how this applies to the real world. So for us, the Imagis are more of a introductory to Python. And then, that's what we call our middle school electives. We call them exploratories. So they're more of just kind of exploring and getting kids interested. But, it's really just one of the things that we can do to kind of get that buy-in and get kids interested to wanting to take the higher level Python when they get to high school. Because again, if they're not exposed in middle school, if they're not, getting excited about some of this stuff at the elementary level even, then you're not going to get the buy-in later on, and then we're not going to get the kids signing up for college and stuff either, trying to fill those jobs.
I want to switch gears a little bit and talk a little bit about that, how this approach has worked for those non-coding teachers as a way to get started with teaching. Because I think one of the things that was really impressive about the way Kelly learned through that first year and continues to learn in various ways, but like Kelly, you were learning, 2 days ahead of what you were teaching the students, right? And maybe I was 3 days ahead, but we were learning that, especially that first year, as we went and learning the concepts and applying them. And for some reason, and I don't know exactly how to describe this phenomenon, but I feel like that first year might have been one of our best years teaching, because we were so engaged and invested in learning it for ourselves that became, kind of obvious to or apparent to the students that we were doing it with them, right? That we were part of this. Have you seen something like that with the non-coding teachers that are now getting into coding? What's that experience been like for them?
I think definitely so. Our like I said, our teachers, most of them do not actually, I don't think any of the ones at our middle school, not a single one of our computer solutions teachers has a coding background. Almost all of them have a business background of some sense. So it's really interesting to see them. And for us at the middle school level, computer solutions is not a coding class. Coding is a unit. It's a part of the class. So it's interesting for me. I go in and I work with a first year teacher, and we kind of co-teach, the lessons together the first time. And then it's interesting because these are only one semester classes. The next semester, they're leading the classes and they're coaching it, and they're taking what I taught and they're taking what Imagi, has provided, and they're turning it into their own thing and providing their own spin on it. And it's interesting too, because when you're only teaching this as a unit and it's not a full-time coding class, how it's like you're relearning it every single time and you're getting excited and you're adding more to what you did the last time. So yeah, I definitely think the teachers are getting into it more as well from some of these tools that they're using like Imagi.
Yeah, I remember our tool. It will remain nameless, but we had a tool as well, and they would come say, "I have a problem. I don't know. Well, let's see. That's a great question." Sean would say, "How can we figure that out?" And solving the problems with the kids, I have to admit, Sean, it was probably a highlight of my teaching career at that time. So really getting that mindset to take on the risks. Was something is something that I don't think I'll let go. And I don't know if it was you, Dora, that brought it up, is about that mindset.
Yes.
Yeah. Did you want to expand
Um,
on it? You said something great about it.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, yeah, exactly. I think it's been so inspiring to me, like actually being able to talk to and meet the educators who are like non-coders and picked up Imagi and the things that they have shared. So we have an English teacher who recently like shared on one of our blog posts, or a media like specialist, librarian, and really just admitting to the fact that like, oh, I told my students that we're just gonna have to figure this out together because I don't know this myself. And so I think the common denominator among the educators that I've like talked to who love Imagi is really about the mindset and not really about having a coding background. It's just like curiosity and being open to trying something. And also the reason why I think it's extra useful in coding is we actually like in our first lesson, we have some slides around like, bugs and errors and how like error messages are actually your friends. And so that kind of like fear of failing is something that you really have to like overcome, because like your code is never going to work for the first time. And so it's just kind of nice to learn from the beginning that like, oh, like mistakes are just part of the process, and we're all going to have to learn from it. And so, yeah, I find that really inspiring, like hearing the stories of educators who kind of approached it that way.
Yep.
I definitely
I
felt there was
think
a point oh, go ahead, Chelsea.
I said, well, I also think that, just teaching perseverance and that idea of computational thinking, even if the kids don't decide to go on and they're not going to pursue a job or a career in, technology or computers or coding or whatever, that computational thinking is so important for kids these days. And to at least have some understanding of how technology works, and even just understanding like what a pixel is. And it's like all the time, it's interesting because we talk about the Imagi charms, and the kids are always like, well, I want more pixels. Like this isn't enough pixels to do what I want to do. And then you can have that whole conversation about, well, how times have changed, and we talk about like how many pixels the original Super Mario was. And then we even pull up pictures of like Lara Croft, the original, and then like Lara Croft now, and we talk about how pixels and technology have changed. So I think even just giving kids some of that understanding that technology is changing, and you're going to be able to persevere and adapt and change with it. And right now maybe they are the more computer savvy, maybe more computer savvy than their teachers in some cases, but that's part of the growth for the teachers and the students, I think.
100%. I can't help but think of Nick Tollervey of the Moo Editor, and one of his things at the end of the help document on the editor is, if there's something that the Moo Editor can't do, it's time that you graduated from the Moo Editor. So next time a student says there's just not enough pixels, say, I know a great LED board that's this big from Adafruit. Go buy it. Graduate to Circuit Python. So that's kind of nice and really powerful for a teacher. For me, it's humbling, a little bit embarrassing at sometimes, but I like to tell my 8th graders, I said, you're already smarter than I will ever be, because you're going to keep growing and I'm still going to be teaching the basic concepts of Python. I'm going to try to grow a little bit, but not as fast as you. So I'd like that the kids are always aiming high. Sean, did you have a question? I didn't have a question. I was rambling.
No, I have a question for both Dora and Chelsea. And one of the things that we discovered as we went through the teaching process was that constraints breed creativity, right? Like
Mhm.
constraints drive really interesting creative solutions when you only have 64 pixels. Well, how can I do something really interesting with the 64 that I have? Are there, so I think just for a second, I wanted to step back and kind of define the Imagi charm first, because we have multiple components. We have the app that you described and the ability for people to write code even without the hardware, but the hardware itself is really nice, and you can check it out online. There's great imaging, well done on the product photography. Like, it's something that I really like in terms of, the hardware itself is, looks rugged without looking chunky, right? It's smooth, it's sleek, it has really nice design to it, but it's an LED matrix. It has like a nice charm lanyard with it. You can recharge it. You connect it to your app via Bluetooth, so you don't have to like worry with a bunch of wires just to get your code running sometimes. That constraint of the hardware, the fact that it has the 64 pixels, what creativity have you seen from that? What are the things that people have come up with as really interesting solutions to problems that the constraints have driven?
I can just quickly mention, and I know Chelsea has some examples because I've heard her talk about it. But I love that you mentioned this like creativity or like constraints, like breed creativity, because that was exactly the concept. And I think when we created Imagi this way, the idea was, when I learned Python coding in college, like I really struggled. Like that was my first subject ever where I really struggled, because there was so much like stuff around that you had to do, like set up. And so what we were trying to do is really move away, like all the things that are making it complicated to get to your like first like positive feedback that you created something. And so what I've seen is that, first of all, a lot of teachers and kids have created like bigger images by collaborating and putting things together, which I love seeing. But just to give you some of my favorite projects I've seen, so through the animations you can do like really cool things. And there was a kid who just loved Harry Potter and was quite advanced because learned about the random function. So recreated the sorting hat from Harry Potter. So if you run your code and you upload it to the Imagi charm, then it will like show a hat, and then it will show like the logo of which like house you belong to. So I think that's like a big favorite for me. But yeah, it's almost like you can tell stories through like a series of images. So I've seen like beautiful things. And then we have these challenges, like we had around like traveling or languages. And so I don't know, like from a Japanese flag and the cherry blossom tree and all of that, like really telling stories, which I love seeing.
It's been really interesting to see the coding be able to go cross-curricular, because it is a little bit more simpler with the 64 pixels. It's really hard to make those cross-curricular connections if you are doing something really, really deep and high level sometimes. So we've had a science class. The kids have, partnered and done the phases of the moon before. We've had kids do the parts of plot and use the animations to code different parts of plot, like scenes from the stories. We have had kids collaborate together to make one giant image by combining together. So just sometimes I think for me, just seeing those cross-curricular connections and seeing like a computer solutions teacher work with a core teacher to figure out how they're going to use this product to teach both of their content areas, I think is just really cool.
I can't help, and this is what happens when we have these great conversations. I think of some cool ideas. I can't help of thinking of a challenge, recreating a better Nyan cat. So that's been around for what? I don't know, for a little while. Was it? I looked it up. I saw 2011, but for some reason I feel like it was longer ago. Where did it come up, Sean? You're like a wealth of knowledge. But try to get Nyan cat across, or create the new meme for that or something. But that's what I think of.
That's a
challenge accepted.
I must say though, like the criticism of the size of the matrix does come up. I recently visited a school just outside New York, and I had a student come in when she learned that I was the one who made the tool, and she actually got on her knees and started praying, please make the matrix bigger. So I couldn't leave until I promised that we'll think of a way of, maybe not the hardware, but on the software side, like allowing for more. But maybe I will like steal your idea, Kelly. Like, you're graduated.
Here you go.
Find a different tool.
I like Imagi XL. I think that's the way to go.
Or like a vector board. You know,
Ooh.
instead, so if you've seen the vector board, they flip like an old train station. Instead, you have to code a gigantic Imagi board classroom set. Kickstart that one. Oh, cool.
Well, I think also though, like at a elementary and like, you know, middle school level, kids are really tough on technology.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
if you see some of these like Chromebooks that these kids bring in, like you're like, oh my gosh, kid, like how like what happened to this thing? So I think one of the nice things about the size of the Magitarm is that it is like durable. I mean, we've had ours, I think now going on 3 years, and surprisingly, we have not lost one. And that is surprising. Like, I'm surprised to say that. But they hold up to like a good drop and stuff. When you're with middle school kids, we do have other products in our county to teach coding. Imagi's not the only thing we have, and some of them are more expensive and some of them don't hold up as well. So I think even just considering that, you know, it's like, yeah, that you could do more with a bigger board, or, you know, like you can upgrade to these other things. But sometimes when it comes to the things that students are going to be using in mass, sometimes simpler is better.
All right. I like to do this to everybody. So you had one piece of advice to talk to a teacher or a school about getting into coding without naming a product. You know, we're going to put the product aside. You have one piece of advice for teachers. I'm too old. You can't teach a old dog, new tricks. I can't teach coding. It's too hard. What would you say? Make Sean go first. While you think.
I mean, the one that always comes to mind to me is the story of the Nobel Prize winner from 7 or 8 years ago in economics. The guy won the Nobel Prize in his late 50s, and he did it all using Python, Jupyter analysis, and all this stuff. And he started learning Python in his early 50s. So, you know, if you can do that and use the coding as a tool or as a vehicle to achieve something or make something better, it's worth learning and it's worth doing, right? And you know, no, we're not all going to be Nobel Prize winners as a result of learning code, but if you can learn coding in your 50s and use it to do something great or even something just really good, isn't it worth a try, right? Like, why not? What's the worst that can happen?
Yep, like that. Anyone else?
Well, because you literally said like you can't teach. Oops, sorry, Chelsea. Okay. Just because you said like you can't teach all those new tricks, I like it rang a bell in my head. And so I actually visited like Chelsea's county and had a long conversation with her and some of her colleagues. And I actually had a quote, like literally saying one of Chelsea's colleagues that like she had this fear at first, but then actually it's been so fun. And it made her feel more relevant and, you know, just like being part of like what's going on in the modern world. So it was at the end of the day, like really fulfilling and gave like a new kind of like topic to engage with fellow colleagues and just like a new motivator. So I think at the end of the day, like pretty much what you said before, like what's the worst thing that can happen? But at the end of the day, it could be just a new, a new fulfillment and a new motivating factor, really. And it doesn't, you don't have to win the Nobel Prize, but just keeping up with the world.
So I think our education system is changing a little bit. I know that in our county, we're really pushing for those 21st century skills now. It's not just about learning, you know, the science term or the English term or learning the knowledge for the sake of having a great trivia Jeopardy knowledge. I think now it's kind of turning more to like, well, do I have those skills that I can collaborate and I can create? And I think that, you know, being able to create and collaborate and show that I'm learning and growing and I can do that with others in a work type environment. I think that's what the whole, goal of schools is and what it's kind of moving towards. And I think that coding is just another way to do that. So like you said, I don't know why teachers wouldn't want to try or be willing to learn. I mean, we're trying to make our next generation, right? So I think that we can't be afraid. I mean, if we want to prepare our students for the future, we have to jump right in with them.
100%. Well, I'll answer my own question too. It's funny because I've been trying to get teachers at our school to get into coding and use of AI or push in some sort of tech. And it's always difficult to get into the door sometimes with teachers. And funnily enough, a teacher came back from a conference a couple weeks ago, Learning and the Brain conference. It's a cognitive science conference in New York. And she grabbed my arm. She said, Kelly, did you know that coding really enhances cognitive abilities? And I went, what? I didn't know. She goes, it helps them critically think and analyze situations. And it's so good for the brain to learn to code. I was like, oh, wow. And I joked around and I said, have I not been telling you that for about 4 or 5 years? So I think the hardest job to do as a ed tech specialist or coding teacher is just to wait, because eventually those teachers will slowly come around. So I think mine's more for the ed tech specialist. Just wait, just keep knocking on the door, just keep reminding people about the innovative side of coding, how it makes connections, how we're just like ready to handle the real world and bring everything together. And eventually everyone will see, the benefits of what we get to experience. Especially, I think we get an added bonus, no offense, Sean and Dora, but as non-coders who've been doing a thing one way, and then all of a sudden our brain is forced to think differently and to code, it does something for us, benefiting our cognitive load and our cognitive ability. So that's what I would say to all those teachers out there. If you want to feel that brain spinning after years of teaching, like 25 years, then go learn code. So.
And the only thing I would add to that is go learn code and connect it with what you're doing already, like the stuff that you care about and you're passionate about. I think that's the secret. That's the key. Like for both students and for teachers, it has to enhance or improve or transform something you're already doing. Because I know for me, coming at it from the other direction, I was very comfortable with technology, very comfortable with coding. I had a lot of experience, but adding teaching to that, it was like the opposite direction, right? Here's something new that I'm learning how to do, and I'm connecting that and enhancing something that I already know. It made both my teaching and my coding better. And I now get lots of, compliments and feedback from people saying, wow, you know how to explain that really well. Thank you for sharing that with us. Like, well, I've had a lot of practice now, and my brain has rewired itself to be able to do that. So it absolutely goes in both directions. That connection is what really makes the difference.
Very true. Wow.
All right. I think we're right at the top of the hour, and I want to just say thank you to both of you. This has been a really inspiring conversation, really enjoyable to learn from each of you and see how you're bringing more and more people into these subject areas of teaching and technology and coding that we all love and share the love of. Thank you for being more inclusive and bringing more people out from their shells and into the world of coding and technology.
Yeah, glad to be here and be a part of it, and thank you for having me.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Kelly, do we have any announcements this week?
Well, we're like 2 weeks away.
I know.
Dun, dun, dun.
The PyCon Education Summit in Pittsburgh.
Yes.
And then the rest of PyCon after that. But yes,
Yeah,
we are.
Yeah.
But we're there, I think, the 16th, 17th, and 18th for
Mhm.
each of us. So if you're going to be in Pittsburgh for either the education conference or education summit or the PyCon conference overall, please stop us, flag us down in the hallway. We'd love to chat. Always, love hearing what people are doing in the community and what they're working on. Yeah, lots of good stuff coming over the next few weeks.
Lots of good stuff. And it's 9 to 4, the Ed Summit. And we've got tons of space. And we have, I think, some opportunities for some lightning talks. We did a nice little talk last week about lightning talks. So yeah, if you want to do a lightning talk, sign up, come see us, send an email. We'll get back to you.
Yeah, we've got a little bit of everything. We've got speaker talks, we've got workshops, we've got lightning talks. There's going to be birds of a feather throughout the conference for teachers. So we're really trying to make this really a great place for educators to come and connect with other educators in the Python world.
Cool. And I think Dora might be bringing some emojis to do a little hands-on. So
That is correct. I'll be there with my charms and we'll be coding.
excellent. She'll be doing Nyan Cat.
You know what? Yeah, you gave me a 2-week warning, so we might be doing
Excellent.
All right. Well, I think that'll do it for this week. So thank you for joining us and for teaching Python. This is Sean.
And this is Kelly signing off.